Alright guys, welcome back to another episode. It's your boy G. This is going to be a rant video, so if you don't like my voice, you know the like button's down there. But it's story time. So I was chilling outside Micro Center, at like 6 a.m. or some shit, you know what I'm saying? Trying to get a 3080 graphics card, like one does, in the greatest country in the world, we fucks with capitalism. Cause America, you feel me? But yeah. And I was just chatting it up with the PC Master Race boys, everybody outside Micro Center, you know what I'm saying, just talking it up, saying, I've had a lot of free time with the pandemic or whatever, talking about how I want to like unionize one of the local grocery stores in my neighborhood because they only start off at $10 an hour, saying controversial shit to some people, you know what I'm saying, just talking about how like everybody deserves a living wage and all this, just propaganda, you know what I'm saying, because this is America, no one deserves a living wage, right? Like, fuck that. Everybody should be paid 50 cents a day. So this 45-year-old white dude comes up, right? I know his age because during this conversation that we had, he mentioned his age. That's the only reason why I know it now. But he comes up, like, right as I'm talking about, like, I was talking about a lot of stuff with the dudes in the line or whatever. We were just chopping it up. But, like, I got on to the point of, like, how I want to, like, start a union for a random company just so I could help out the employees there. Because, unions, I think unions are good for the country and they're good for Americans, This 45-year-old man walks up and he's just like, unions are bad for this country, and he just starts going off. He's like, your generation is just lazy. You guys need to work harder. You guys just expect everything now. And he's just going off. He's like taking me out the game. And I'm just arguing with him about, like, I start arguing back with him, but let's see. Oh yeah, I was just talking about how, like, I live in a neighborhood where the houses are going for $400K about, which is an upper class neighborhood for Cleveland, Ohio, you know what I'm saying? And I was noticing how Dave's, I can't mention names, how this grocery store chain seems to only open up stores in upper class neighborhoods, but they only pay enough to hire high school students, but they open up in upper class neighborhoods. So that means there's a lot of money being scooped off the top and they're not bringing it to the bottom line, because rich people, they buy way more groceries than poor people, you know what I mean? He told me people should get paid based on how much skill is required for their job. And at that point, I just started laughing, you know what I mean? The first argument that I, like, actually said to him, I was talking about, like, the grocery store workers worked through the entire pandemic because they were as necessary to the economy as doctors. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're very important. Where we get our food is, like, if we don't get our food, we're gonna die. Like, it's that important to, like, the community. So I believe that grocery store workers are more valuable than almost any other position. Like, if they weren't there, we would starve to death during a pandemic, you know what I'm saying? So I was just saying, yeah, they should get paid more than 10 or whatever. Like, that was my first point to him. And then yeah, this is like I wrote in my notes, like who determines, like, how hard a skill is? Everyone has their own strengths and everyone has their own weaknesses. And, like, matter of fact, the average American is very bad at coding. Like, on average, we're not very good at coding because we have a bad education system. Because we prioritize, like, money over even good education. Like, I started telling them how I recently moved from Boston, where the minimum wage was like almost $15, and it was going up a dollar every year until it reaches 15, and how it didn't make people who were middle management and people who made $20 or $40 an hour, they didn't make less money. And a lot of times, like, people who are making a little bit more than 15, they all got raises just like everyone else. Like, everyone who was making $20, $25, assistant store managers, everyone was getting raises relative to the bottom line. And yes, goods went up a little bit in price every year, but it wasn't so substantial that the extra dollar was taken up. You know what I mean? Because we work, a lot of people work more than 40-hour weeks just to make ends meet. So when that extra dollar came in, it went way further when you're working 80 hours a week. You know what I'm saying? 12 hours a day, that's extra 12, like, maybe even $13 a day. Like it goes a long way. But this man really insisted that starting a union for a random company that makes like nothing, they make $10 an hour to start, like it's just a bad idea, and it's the problem with this country, and that my generation, you know, people who are 22 or whatever, we're entitled and we don't work hard. And I just got to thinking, because you know, I've worked 80-hour work weeks and mainly 60-hour work weeks when I was a shift lead for a coffee place. Like I don't, and I remember talking to some of my professors at Berklee College of Music who told me that they paid for their whole semester with just a part-time job at a bar within a couple of weeks back in the 80s. And I'm thinking, what does he mean we don't work hard? All of us, everyone that I know has to work a part-time job in school just to pay off their room and board. They can't even touch their tuition. So I was really trying to figure it out. And if you guys don't believe me, like you guys think I'm bullshit, I'm gonna pull up literally my employee like chart. I'm gonna black out like my name and my address and the company name and address. But you know, here was 1 week in 2019, like October 10th, I worked 40 hours regularly, and then I worked 32 hours over the 40 hours in this 1 week. It's just 1 week from October 7th to October 18th, 10 days, you know, like that's how, like not even 10 days, like 9 days, like that's how long the pay period was, 9 days or some shit. Like this is pretty outrageous, right? I worked this pretty regularly too. It wasn't just a one time. It wasn't always 80 hours, but it was always over 40 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like here's the week before that. I worked 78 hours. So I worked 79 hours that week. I worked 78 hours the next week. Yeah, let's see. And then I worked 51 hours. You know what I'm saying? It got so grueling. I remember I would tell them that I couldn't come in because my body, like my back was hurting. And 59 hours. I keep going week after week. It's still a lot of hours. And I'd have to give some because my body would hurt so much. We go up 51 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like we constantly, my generation, we have to work over 40 hours. When this man told me that, like, my generation doesn't work hard enough, that didn't read to me at all. So, and the whole thing about if wages go up, it'll make people who like him, who makes $20 an hour, they'll make less money. No, this man, people get this whole idea wrong. If the bottom line makes more money, you're gonna make more money because jobs are gonna be more competitive. Other jobs that are easier jobs are gonna pay the same amount as what you pay, and so you can quit your job and you can get an easier job, and then those, like, they'll start, it'll make more competition for your job, and your job will have to raise wages to keep employees. You don't get it? Like, if there's more jobs that offer more money, the employers have to compete with each other instead of workers having to compete with each other. You get what I'm saying? Or, like, people don't understand it, but you have to live in a place where they pay 15 to really understand that. Oh, and another thing that somehow we got onto generational wealth, and he said he got really defensive. He's like, you want to see generational wealth? Look at the Jewish community. And it was almost like an anti-Semitic like sentiment in the way he was like condescendingly saying like they hoard wealth or something. And I was just like, dude, like, is America really turning into this place that's anti-Semitic? Like that, like I just think it's really crazy. There's people who don't like Jewish people for no reason at all. Like, they work together. Yes, their community has like more money because they don't do shit like dog each other's unions. They work together. And the people in the community work together, and that's how wages stay high. Duh. We all need to do that. We all need to model that community, so we get taken advantage of because we work as individuals and we don't work together. But, you know, At the end of the day, I didn't get to this man at all. He still believes that unions are terrible. And another point that I want to bring up, just to keep this rant going, because for no reason, but is I looked up like, let me just change my screen over. I looked up police departments, right? How many police departments are unionized, right? I'm guessing by this man's opinions that he loves the police, but that most police departments are unionized. That's what made me laugh. So like, unions are like inherently an American thing. Like most police departments are unionized, and the people, regular jobs need to have unions too. It's how workers negotiate with their like bosses. But to get off this topic now, because this man just his whole opinion just didn't make any sense. Like he was looking very, very narrow-mindedly. Like, yeah, times were better in the past, now they're different, and we can all make more money because most of the wealth is accumulated by like the top 25%. But let's just get onto a different topic, because I saw some cool videos on YouTube like this, so let's talk about those. So you know Dave Cross, the actor or whatever, Why America Sucks at Everything. This video made me laugh, because this actor is like a pretty cool actor, and he's been in some action movies too, and scary movie. So let's just look at this.
America is the greatest country on earth.
Yeah.
The strongest, the richest, the most powerful country on earth. As an American, I'm sure you've heard that roughly 135 times a year. 235 if you go to public school. 335 if you go to a Christian academy. We're told that Americans have the best lives of any people in the world. That we have low taxes, small government, and the highest living standards on earth. And most inaccurately, that we're the freest. Well, it is partly true. America is the richest country, not just in the world, but in the history of the world. It's really hard to comprehend just how rich we are. We have 18 million people who are millionaires. American households own about $100 trillion in wealth, an almost unthinkable amount of money. Okay, so America is the richest country ever. But there's a curious paradox. Most Americans actually have a much worse standard of living than people who live in poorer countries like Germany or Finland or Britain. But how can that be? That shouldn't make any sense. Well, here's the shitty deal. Americans get significantly worse services because our tax dollars don't fund them. So of course our services are worse, and thus we enjoy less happy lives than people who live in the aforementioned countries. Not that difficult a concept to conceive, really. You get what you pay for, said the cartoon dog to the other cartoon dog. And while you might think the reason American tax dollars don't fund as many services is because we pay lower taxes than other countries, that's not even true. When you add federal, state, local, and sales taxes and include other costs and services that our taxes don't cover but other countries' taxes do, like our uniquely high health insurance premiums, you'll find that Americans actually give away more of their wages than most of the developed world. For example, in Canada, for a married worker with 2 kids, all of the previously mentioned costs combined, from taxes to health insurance premiums, make up only 11% of the average wage. In the UK, it's just about 26%. Meanwhile, once you tack on the cost of our outlandish health insurance premiums, you're spending a whopping 43% of your paycheck. That's more.
So we pay less taxes, right? We pay less taxes than the rest of the world. Not actually. The percent, because our wages are so low in America compared to other countries. Australia currently right now has a $19 minimum wage. Because our wages are so low, we actually pay more percentage of our wage towards all these other things than most other countries. That's what he's saying. To healthcare, Social Security, all these other, we pay more of it because we make less money than other developed worlds. So I mean, we're the greatest country in the world, though, of course.
More than France, Finland, Sweden, and Norway.
Wait,
I love this ad.
Love this. Wait, I love this.
In real reality, Americans keep much less of what we own than in other countries. In other countries, their government takes a bit more tax, but then gives that money back to their citizens in the form of healthcare or job support. or a general safety net for all vulnerable citizens, no matter how dusky they are. So what do Americans get for the money we pay in? Well, sure, we get a crumbling infrastructure, shameful homelessness, and millions of hungry, neglected children, but we also get some of the worst services in the developed world.
Let's go.
Again, our healthcare. American healthcare is simultaneously the most expensive, the least efficient, and the least effective healthcare system in the developed world. Hey, the devil's trifecta. And in exchange for this extremely expensive, inefficient healthcare system, what do we get? Well, we get some of the worst health outcomes in the developed world. We have fewer hospital beds per capita than people in Turkey or Brunei. Americans have a lower life expectancy than people in Lebanon or Cuba. And in the Mississippi Delta and much of Appalachia, life expectancy is lower than in Bangladesh. In fact, in 2017, the United Nations sent a commissioner to West Virginia to document what he saw, and he described, quote, third world conditions of absolute poverty, unquote. We even have a higher infant mortality rate than people in Russia and Serbia. In every single metric, America does worse across the board.
Let's go.
So
the greatest
why
country
is
in the
healthcare
world.
so expensive? Because it's so complicated. You have to look for in-network physicians, schedule an established care appointment, beg for coverage from your insurance company that couldn't care less about you, and that's if you're lucky enough to have good insurance.
Swing Trader from Investors Business Daily helps you
Oh,
make more
shit.
money in the stock market by taking
I
advantage of
love these
short-term.
ads. Yeah.
Compare that to Britain and all of those other evil, socialist-like countries where it's simple. Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it. That's it. I'll repeat that. Public hospitals provide free treatment to people who need it.
Oh no. That is communism. That's terrible. Those are commies.
And here's the best part. Even though Britain offers healthcare for free, their system is actually a lot cheaper to run than ours. Per capita healthcare spending in the US is almost 3 times what it is in Britain, and almost 5 times what Canadians spend. In fact, Americans spend the most per person of any country in the world for healthcare. But the free market is more efficient, you screech. But in America, private systems often aren't efficient at all. Private drug companies have an incentive to charge whatever they can get away with for pharmaceuticals. In Canada, a carton of insulin costs about $20. In the US, it costs $300. And with private insurance companies footing the bill, hospitals have an incentive to get as much money out of patients as possible too. In 2015, the average cost of an MRI scan in the US was $1,119. But it was only $215 in Australia. Spain, about $181. And our healthcare system is so inefficient that we spend over a third of our cost on administration. The United States spends significantly more on administration than we spend on preventative.
That should be illegal, right? And that should be illegal, right? That the same thing that happens in colleges, by the way.
Or long-term healthcare. That's just not smart. Okay, we get it. We all know that American healthcare is so much more expensive, you say, but that's the cost of having the freest freedom in God's favorite country. Well, guess what? Medical procedures that are totally free in Britain, like giving birth, cost tens of thousands of dollars in the United States.
Interesting.
I mean, you want to talk about the cost of freedom. Sadly, because of these high costs, Americans often avoid going to the doctor, something almost half the population say they do. With shoddy or non-existent health insurance, Americans will wait until their conditions force them into the emergency room where treatment is far more expensive. Again, not a smart system. Quite often, they end up putting off medical visits and dying. Susan Finley, a 53-year-old Walmart employee in Colorado, got pneumonia and took 1 day off of work beyond what Walmart's policy allows. So of course, Walmart's gonna Walmart, which they did by firing her. Without her job, she lost her nominal health care coverage, she struggled to find new work, and after avoiding a visit to the doctor for flu-like symptoms, she was found dead in her apartment. When Americans do manage to get treated, they frequently can't afford it.
Literally, guys. I as I showed you guys, I would make around 1,000 a week, and I still believe that anyone, McDonald's frontline workers, should make the same amount of money as that. And I was like an upper level position. I got to assistant store manager. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that I was making 1,000 a week. I believe the bottom line should make 1,000 a week. Everybody should make that. That is how much it costs to live in America. Like, even if your rent's only $400, like, this is the greatest country in the world. We should have a better life than the average country. A lot of other countries live better than that. So, regardless of the point, so I was making 1,000 a week. I didn't have healthcare, so I would go to the dentist every couple of months because I really liked having clean teeth, and I would spend like the outrageous $250 to get my teeth cleaned without insurance, and I would spend all the other costs because, you know, getting an X-ray, that's like $500, getting this, getting that. I would spend all those costs just out of pocket, and I could afford it. But not everyone in the country works 80 hours a week at $16 an hour. Not everyone does that. So, and I don't think you should have to do that. I think you should be able to work 40 hours a week and make 1,000 at the bottom level of this country, so you can afford all these ridiculous healthcare prices.
Simple, life-saving treatments can cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if they don't have really good insurance, they're forced to take on medical debt. Tens of millions of Americans owe medical debt, often into the tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, in a country like Britain or Norway, medical debt is almost unheard of. But hey, that's why GoFundMe is such a critical component of American healthcare. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. I'll repeat that. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is now for medical bills. America is such a strong, powerful, rich, and great country that its citizens have to beg strangers on the internet for money so they can get life-saving treatments that are free in the rest of the developed world. But hey, that's just healthcare. Americans get terrible deals wherever you look. Let's take work, for example. Americans work longer hours than people in any other rich country in the world, and that's not because they enjoy sleep deprivation and not seeing their families for days at a time. It's because they don't want to starve, or freeze, or die. See,
And do you know how you work 79 hours in a week? Do you know how you do that? There's only about like 100 and something hours in a week or whatever. You only have time to sleep about 4 to 5 hours a day. And yeah, if you do that, you can say that that's normal. That's how much sleep you get anyway. But if you do that every single day of the whole year, you'll die. You'll die from sleep deprivation. If you work hard for 12 hours to 14 hours a day, and then you just do that every day, standing on your feet, running back and forth all day, you'll die.
America has the least generous job support programs, the least generous family benefits, and the least generous unemployment benefits of any wealthy country. It's one of the only countries on Earth that doesn't guarantee paid time off for vacations. It doesn't even help provide paid time off for parents who just had a child. And it's not coincidental that we're also one of the most hostile countries to workers' rights. America has one of the lowest unionization rates in the entire world. Maybe this deprivation, our refusal to give people the means to lead a good, dignified life commensurate with how rich our country is, can explain a bit of what we've seen in the United States over the last few decades. Fraying communities, rising rates of depression and suicide.
You wonder why most of the high-paying jobs are taken by immigrants, and not Latinos, not people from Mexico, people from Denmark, the UK, all these other countries, because they get resources that helps them become more educated and more healthy than us, and then they're able to come here and take our skilled jobs because we can't get them because we don't have the resources to educate our own people to get those jobs. So
huge numbers of deaths from drug overdoses. These so-called deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdoses, alcoholic liver disease, they're one big reason why American life expectancy has actually started to decline over the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
And with such poor conditions, it's not a surprise that poverty is so rampant in the United States. America devotes a smaller percentage of spending on social welfare than any other industrialized economy because, say it with me, socialism is evil.
It's evil.
It's evil.
It's communism.
Go to Denmark and try telling those happy, healthy families enjoying their paid vacation that their system of government is evil. Guess what? I guarantee they'll know you're an American. But I digress. America also has the highest rate of child poverty of any developed country, and the highest percentage of workers earning significantly less than the national median income. That seems pretty evil to me, especially since such a tiny fraction take as much of your money for themselves and their families as you will let them. All the while, both parties smile and shake hands. Across every single metric, no people accept a worse deal than Americans today. High taxes, high cost of living for next to nothing in return from the government. The most expensive healthcare system for the worst health outcomes. More money taken from workers for the highest rate of child poverty. We are the richest country in the history of the world, but we have fewer miles of high-speed rail than Uzbekistan. We are the greatest country in the world, yet we have the most people in prison of any country, and the highest incarceration rate as well, and a higher rate of police killings than in Angola and Sudan. America is bad at everything because instead of choosing to make life better for people through a public healthcare system or more generous childcare policies or better public transit or programs that allow people to spend more time with their families, American law is designed and crafted to protect a class of parasitical middleman industries. Instead of using a proportionally tiny piece of the massive amount of the wealth in this country to make people's lives healthier and happier, most of our elected leaders are, and have been for generations, engaged in a massive project of looting, gently and lovingly guiding as much money as possible from working people into the pockets of the well-connected and the ultra-rich. Think about that as we start hearing about the inevitable rise in homelessness, poverty, starvation, and sickness that will occur during these coming months and years in the greatest, strongest, richest, most powerful country on the face of the earth.
America.
I'm David Cross for the Gravel Institute.
Don't you love it? Don't you love this country? It's like this is the best country in the world, right? Couldn't tell me anything other than that. It's truly the greatest. Like we're living in the greatest country ever to exist in the humanity of the entire existence of the world. So yeah, let's do it. And yeah, here's another video that I saw that was quite interesting, that kind of related but not really. But
what do you know about the American Civil War? Just saying these words, the Civil War, probably brings some familiar images to mind. Northern soldiers in Union blue marching against Southern troops in Confederate gray. Epic battles at Shiloh and Gettysburg. Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery. The victory of the Union over the Confederacy. But there's something else you should know about that era. Something that ties these events together and that you probably didn't learn in school. The Civil War was also America's greatest left-wing revolution. Here's how. In the early 19th century, African slavery was the foundation of social and economic life.
left wing, you say, but also to realize the Republican Party used to be the left wing party, just so you know.
In the American South,
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Millions of black workers were owned as property by wealthy planters who denied them education, controlled their family lives, and reaped the fruits of their labor. This system was wildly profitable, and the wealth it produced allowed a tiny elite to dominate Southern and national politics. And before the Civil War, it was expanding all across the Western Hemisphere. In 1860, between the United States, Brazil, and Cuba, there were more enslaved people than ever before. For years, a small group of American abolitionists had denounced slavery as an abomination. These radical activists were scorned by much of society and ignored by both the two mainstream political parties. But in the 1850s, as slaveholders tried to extend slavery across the West, their opponents made a breakthrough. The old two-party system melted down, and the new Republican Party won massive Northern support by opposing slavery's expansion while putting bondage itself on a road to ultimate extinction. The abolitionists broke through, in part, because they named the slave power as the oppressive ruling class that it was. They pointed out that slaveholders were just 1% of the population, but somehow controlled every branch of government. They argued that black bondage was not just morally wrong, but a threat to free labor everywhere. The struggle between anti-slavery and slavery, said Abraham Lincoln, was part of the eternal struggle between the common right of humanity and the divine right of kings. The same spirit that says, you toil and work and earn bread and I'll eat it. It was the
Does that sound familiar to you? You toil and work and earn the bread and I'll eat it. You get what I'm saying? Do you ever see the CEOs of your company making coffee at Starbucks or But they do take the money. They scoop off the money off the top. Because they need to do administrative work. Like decide whether they're gonna open up another Starbucks.
common worker, black or white, against the rich. These populist assaults on the ruling class helped Lincoln's party win the election of 1860. Contemporaries called it a political revolution. Its threat to slaveholders was so serious that they formed their own separate republic, the Confederate States of America. In the Civil War that followed, the stakes were clear. The Union fought against human bondage, for a democratic majority, and for the dignity of all labor. The Confederacy fought to preserve bondage and elite rule. Confederates fought, as Lincoln told Congress in 1862, to put capital, that's wealth measured in human beings, above labor in the structure of government. Enslaved laborers understood these stakes. Hundreds of
It wasn't just about the slaves, it was about capitalism.
thousands fled to Union lines, even before emancipation was proclaimed. Radical abolitionists knew it too. Frederick Douglass barnstormed the
Because what is more efficient capitalism than free labor? There's no other, that is the maximum efficiency that capitalism could get to. Free labor, and maybe genetically modifying the slaves with this vaccine. No, I'm kidding. I'm not anti-vax, that was just a joke. But you know what I'm saying? Genetically modified free slaves that are capable of working harder than the average human. Like that would be like the most efficient capitalism. Lower the bottom line, raise the profits, and they charge a premium for the product.
country, rousing black men to enlist in the Union Army. By war's end, around 200,000 black soldiers and sailors had taken up arms to crush the rebellion. The cause of the Union was the cause of the international left. While conservative aristocrats and capitalists in Europe sympathized with the Confederacy, radicals and labor organizations supported the Union. In 1864, a German journalist named Karl Marx declared that the American anti-slavery war would launch a new era of ascendancy for the working class. Emancipation, as Marx understood, was not a middle-class reform project. It was a true social revolution. Only in the United States and in Haiti was emancipation sudden, uncompensated, and enforced by former slaves themselves. That revolution remains incomplete. After the war, former slaves and radical Republicans were defeated by what the scholar W.E.B. Du Bois calls a counter-revolution of property, led by former slaveholders and conservative businessmen. Under the terror of Jim Crow segregation, many of the Civil War's victories for labor and for democracy were rolled back, but not all. The destruction of American chattel slavery was a historic and enduring victory. It meant that black Southerners were able to create the schools and the churches that seeded their later fight against Jim Crow. It radically expanded American democracy and made the modern labor and civil rights movements possible. The Civil War was America's greatest left-wing revolution. Even now, its work remains unfinished. But every left-wing struggle, for the rule of democratic majorities, for the rights of labor over property, and for meaningful freedom and equality, can claim its legacy. I'm Matt Karp, Associate Professor of History at Princeton University for the Gravel Institute.
Yeah, and I mean, so just to get back to like what we're talking about, like it's just really fascinating when I see people arguing that we don't need unions. Unions are the backbone of this country. Just to get back to the main point, the people work together to establish what they need. Like, and I'm not talking about like the total, like the unions and the way they exist today. Like you pay in like a some amount of money or whatever, and the person who provided the services, they take a little bit of money from that, and then they use the rest of the money in a pool to get to negotiate better prices in your healthcare and that. But the basic gist of a union is people work together to get what they need from their superiors, from the ruling class. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with that. Police love it. Every job needs one, so that the people's voice can be heard. But yeah, there's so much more that I'm leaving on the table in this video. But if I say anything else, like, this video is gonna be way too long. So if you guys mess with this discussion, hit the like button, comment down below how you feel about this type of stuff, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.